Hello, hello. Welcome everybody to the Inspire Speaker School show. Let's say that 5 times fast. And today I've got Nicole Schur here, and she is a belonging expert. By that we mean belonging in all ways. But a lot of people, a lot of times we don't feel like we belong. Maybe you're different than somebody else. Maybe you're neurodivergent. Maybe you are in a culture that's different than your culture, or there's just something else that just doesn't make you feel like you belong or quite connect with the people around you. So Nicole has been studying this and has done this deep dive into how does that actually work. And I'm really, really excited to connect with her today and have her share with us all about it because you guys know I'm into connection, and connection, like how relationships are really everything in life. And if we cannot navigate these relationships, it's difficult to have a successful career or run a successful business or have a relationship with a spouse or a partner. And it just affects all areas of our life. So I'm excited to dive into this with you today. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you very much, Michelle. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you have written several books about this, obviously, which are behind you as well. But take us back to why belonging? Why is belonging such an important topic to you? When did you get started kind of studying this, and why?
So I think for me, what I've noticed personally is that when people experience trauma or there's any sort of neurodiverse or non-neurotypical, people have a problem with connecting. And so then how do you connect? If you look at things like Myers-Briggs or Enneagrams, they're great for discovering yourself, but they're not teaching you those connection skills. If you look at conflict resolution modalities, those are great for resolving conflict. If you look at like things like DBT, those are great skills to learn how to do emotional regulation, learn how to life skills, but they're not really necessarily teaching you how to do connection skills. So, how do you connect? What do you do? So, there are patterns in connection. It just like with any type of house, when you build a house, there's patterns to building a house. When you sew, there's patterns to sewing. Life is based on patterns. When you do gardening, you have to know where your certain plants go, otherwise your plants are going to die. Well, there's patterns to connection. There's patterns to humanity. And when we understand the patterns of humanity, we then now can learn how to connect and communicate. And so that's what got me started is understanding the patterns of what do people need to connect and communicate. It's very similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And there's so many things out there that can show us that, but there isn't language. People are always speaking who they are and what they need. And when you learn those patterns, then you can learn how to communicate and connect.
Ooh, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So, before we dive into, because I really want to look at what those patterns are, and whenever we were speaking just before going live on the show, you had mentioned these things. Oh, well, there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this. There's these different modalities, but they're not really filling this need of if connection doesn't come naturally to you, or maybe you've had trauma in the past and just your brain doesn't know how to do it anymore for some reason, then how do we retrain ourselves to do this super important thing that's required in our lives, which is this connection and belonging? But so before we go into the specific steps and patterns, why would you say, with the people that you've worked with or have read your books, why is it, do you think, that belonging is so important to us individually and as a society?
Well, we're made for connection. We are not made to be alone. Now, there's a difference between having you have your quiet time where you rejuvenate. Everybody needs that. But when you're too alone and isolated, you're not going to make as many wise decisions because you don't have someone to bounce your ideas off of. Nobody really wants to be, I have never heard anyone say, I aspire to be the Unabomber and live in the forest by myself. I mean, even if you're living in the forest by yourself, you're still surrounded by trees. everywhere we go, we are belonging somewhere. There's no place where we're ever going to be isolated. And so we have to learn those skills of how to connect, how to communicate. There's all these, I don't like the way the word rules is. There's 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 ways to belong and connect in everything. There's a flow that goes wherever we go. It's like the water flows a certain way, moves a certain way around the rocks when the rocks are there. It's not a rule, it's just the way it moves, and that's the way we go in society. So we're going to learn these skills whether we mean to or not to. We already know them. It's just how are we going to navigate them? And if we're not taught, then it makes it even harder.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you seeing people struggling with if they're not before they start working with you and really learn these skills versus after? What are they really struggling with before? How's that impacting their life versus after you're learning how to connect and you can connect better? What do you see are some of the major shifts that happen with people?
So one of the biggest things I think is that I often talk about, there's two things, is the victim predator rescuer triangle. We all are in that. We've all have some sort of trauma handed down to us, or we've been traumatized of some sort. So a lot of times we'll be stuck in the triangle, and the triangle has pointy edges. And I'm going to tell you, I don't like getting poked with a triangle. I mean, this is probably one of the best. I will say I do a lot of stories, a lot of analogies. It's easier to remember. And so if you become victimized at any point, a lot of times we'll try to stay the victim. And to try and stay the victim, we'll have to either become the predator or the rescuer. And so these are factors that play a factor in this. And so that is one area where we will get burned, and that impacts our belonging. Another thing that will happen is we won't make wise choices in who we hang out with. And sometimes we'll get ourselves in cults and get ourselves more traumatized. We have problems with not connecting with our parents and our parents not listening to us. So a big one is being silent versus silenced and not knowing the difference between the two. And I talk a lot about that. And when we are silenced, that is one of the biggest sayings that still is talked about, but we don't say it as much as we used to. Children should be seen but not heard. And so when we say that, we're teaching ourselves that our voice doesn't matter. Now, there's a skillful way to communicate. However, we're not being taught how to skillfully communicate. And so this is so huge. And one of the things I did with this modality was really bringing conflict resolution skills into this, because this is so important in understanding and identifying how to navigate belonging, because that is part of belonging, is when you have conflict, because you're going to have conflict because a lot of times you're being silenced. So how do you learn to have your voice, and how do you learn how to heal so you can be aware and not go into the triangle?
Yeah. Well, and the voice specifically, I heard you say that word several times, and specifically working with speakers, a lot of times I hear people say, yes, I need to work with you. I need to learn how to get on stage. I need to learn how to share my message because I feel like my voice, like I lost my voice somewhere along the way. Or I used to be confident as a kid, but now I'm not, and things like that. And that keeps us from really connecting with people. So it's in relationships like you're talking about, you're not able to just live your purpose in the world and share your voice because of maybe some of these past traumas. So tell us a little bit more about this modality that you created. What is it exactly? And what are some of those patterns that you were talking about before?
So all personality modalities pretty much are based off of Hippocrates. What we did is we went back to Hippocrates and we used Hippocrates modality. This is the original part of the needs languages. However, we realized that nobody's going to say sanguine. It's just too hard. It sounds like penguin. And then you get this visual of a penguin in the suit, and then it goes down this whole other rabbit trail. So we use language that would be more common for people, and we went back to the four. What happened was is young when Young came along, he brought in introvert and extrovert, and we really wanted it to look more like processing, how people are processing information, because we think before we speak. And we wanted people to bring this more from a processing perspective. So it would be like, where would you plant the seed before the apple came out of the tree, before the tree was. So we're trying to bring you back to the awareness of what your thought is, how you're processing the information. So that's how we started to develop it, and we changed the words. Now there are going to be some similarities to like Myers-Briggs, but we again changed a lot of the words to make it, and we made it so that it's really easy to remember. So we have right, which is your thinker. They're looking for the best way to do something. So they're thinking constantly the best way to do something. Then there's your value, which is about cost versus benefit. They feel to find the cost or the benefit. They're kind of like the Jungle Book birds from the what were they called? The Jungle Book that we were on the branches going, I don't know, what do you want to do? I don't know. Don't start that again.
The vultures, the vultures. Yes.
Vultures, yes, thank you. And then you have what you would call your important. Now they like to go for the prize, so they're very single-minded. And then you have your control, which they're about the record. They're about the environment. And so when we found this, and as we started researching this, we found that people are 2 out of the 4, and there's a reason why they're 2 out of the 4, and it has to do with connection in dating and relationships. Now, there are other factors that play a factor in belonging that you have to bring in to make the fullness to really understand how people are processing belonging. And we did research on this. I did a TED Talk on this, just this piece of belonging. And it became very fascinating how soul ties are connected. We then went deeper into time signatures and how people are processing the world regarding time. And it became very fascinating why some people are super fast and why some people are super slow, and why some people are middle of the road. So this all then became really fun because now we started making fun with, because we're 2 out of the 4, we started having fun. So you have your RVs, and think about an RV. Now you can remember this. Oh my gosh, this person's an RV, you know? So now you're having fun with this lingo, and it's easy to remember. And an RV type person usually likes a little bit of a challenge. Think about driving an RV on a on a beach, you know, like you're driving an RV on on the beach roads, you know? That's a challenge. I would hate to drive that on the Oregon coast, you know, those tiny little roads. Oh my gosh. You have your the only one we can't think of one to go with is the IR. And they tend to be the people that the RV is, they're your think to feel type of people. That's why it's a little more of a challenge. They're very inward. Your IR is looking for the best prize. And I can tell you, we have a very particular person that is a very political person recently that just went for the best prize. And you can tell that he was a little different than what we were used to politically. That went for the best prize. I'm not going to go into it because it's a little controversial right now. But that's why he was a little different than what we were used to, because he was processing that way. And they tend to be a little more like just very high energy. And that's the only one we haven't had a fun little thing with. Your CV, those are like CV joints in a car. That's why they're easy to remember. They're a support system. Then you have your IVs, and they're usually a little more rare. And they're kind of like they're like that fluid. They're really more, they're a very positive person. They're a little more unique. And then you have your RCs, and those are your people that, okay, the CV is, okay, I'm going to go back for a second. The CV is about the environment, the cost versus benefit of the environment. The IV is about the cost or benefit of the prize. The CV, okay, excuse me. Now we're going to go to the, because I got out of order a second. The RC is about the thinking of the best record, the best environment. So they're really looking at the whole environment. And then, did I get all 6? RC, CV, IR. I think I got all 6.
Yes.
I think if I got all 6. So that's really all of them.
Yeah. And so once you know, well, first of all, I'm curious what you are. And then once you I want to know who you are. How do we figure out what we are? And then once you do, how do you take that information and use it for belonging and connection?
So most people are hunters and gatherers. Most people are RCs and RVs. We found that's what most people are, hunters and gatherers. That's the hunter is the V, and the gatherer is the C, because the gatherer is about environment. So they're gathering for the environment, and the hunter is the V because they're about cost versus benefit, because they're like evaluating, should I go for it or should I not go for it? And that's what we figured out. And so that's what most people are. And but this makes other factors more fun, because then you bring in love, then you bring in other things. And again, this is what makes us so unique and so wonderful. And also, that just make so the other thing that makes it more interesting is because you may lean more cost versus benefit, or you may lean more environment, or you may lean more thinking. So there are so many factors that play into this, and how you figure it out is by the words you speak, by what you're drawn to. And again, there's way more factors that play a factor into this, because it's also going to play a factor of who you're around as well. Because again, there's way more that goes into this regarding relationships. Relationships also play a factor, because when you're belonging, that impacts how you show up. That can impact.
Yes. Okay. So once we understand kind of which one of these combinations you are, it can help you because you see what other people are as well, and you understand what are their motivations, what are they looking for, what are they inspired by, what are they avoiding maybe, and then you can maybe speak to them in their language, or like how does it come out in, if I know what mine is, let's say my family, for example, if I understand my personality, my husband's personality, my kids' personalities in my family, now I can connect with them in a different way. Is that right?
So what happens a lot of times, like in parenting, is you'll have two people that will be thinking, one will be thinking this is the best way to do something, the other one will be thinking, no, this is the best way to do something. You're not in alignment. There's a difference between
Right.
opposite and an alignment, and that's where arguments happen, because one will say, no, this is the best way to do something, and the other one's like, no, it's not. And now wounds start happening, because one person's will talks the other person. Now in parenting, you have to be careful, because the kid's going to say, well, I want soda pop every day, all day long. I don't want to drink water. I need candy, So you're like, okay, so how do you navigate that? Because you want to be careful. You don't want to sit there and like create wounds, where you're causing harm, where you're saying, no, you can't. You're going to eat peas and they're allergic to peas, or they don't like peas, and you're not working with them and navigating, maybe it's broccoli instead of peas. But this is where we have to understand not to become rigid. We have to understand how to navigate to work, how to have balance. There's a difference between opposite, whereas let's say the opposite would be one's looking at cost versus benefit, while the other one's looking at environment. That's opposite. And someone's saying, no, the environment needs to be this way. And this person's saying, no, this is costing me, and I can't be in this environment because it's costing me. But they're not speaking environment, they're speaking cost versus benefit. And so the two of them aren't speaking the same language.
Very good. Very good. So, how can you give us just an example of maybe when that happens? I see, one of your books in the back is talking about workplace, for example. Whenever something like that happens in the workplace, and and you're speaking two different languages, what does that look like? And how does, if you understand this kind of framework that you're talking about, how do you navigate that differently?
So one example would be, you would have like a IR was speaking best prize. They're going for the best prize. And a really common conflict is like tech world is a common but we're going to use this as a CV and an IR. An IR is the salesperson. They're going for the best prize. The CV is the support system. And they're saying, hey, wait a second. We're in the supports here. We're trying to make sure that that all the systems are in place, the support systems are in place, and the salesperson is going, no, 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 we're going to make this happen. We're going to get the best prize. And they're like, but we can't support if we don't have these in place. And so they're talking at each other. And one's going for the prize while the other is sitting there trying to make sure that the supports are in place. Another example can be and this can be like disability related. A lot of times, people that are more high energy like bright lights. And what will happen is they'll turn the bright lights on. Well, the CV is not the high energy person, and so they need the lights dimmer. So they're in this conflict right now. And so the IR is like, but I need this high energy. It's like the tortoise and the hare. That's one of the perfect examples. So the hare is already ahead, and the tortoise is at that slow, steady pace. So they're talking at each other. So a lot of it is when you know that language and you know your speed or you know how you're navigating, you can say, I really like the lights bright. I'm aware. And can we compromise? How do we navigate this? So you're both listening to yourself, but you're also listening to the other party. And you also, the other great thing about this is you know where your challenges and your struggles are. I know where I am going to struggle in my needs languages. I'm going to also be able to tell you where not to tell me when I'm struggling, like what I need in that. And sometimes it'll be somewhat of a struggle and sometimes it won't. And what I mean by that is there are things that, for example, for like the cost versus benefit person, for them to make a decision, they really need to see either cost or benefit. So if you are out to dinner with them and they cannot make a decision for the life of them, you've got to show them a cost versus benefit. If you don't, they will sit there through the whole night and not be able to decide anything. So for you as a person to be their partner or to be with them, helping them through that is huge. Not getting frustrated, not getting upset, but knowing that that is something they need to make a decision. That's what I'm saying. This is where this becomes really helpful.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense in terms of, oh, I know what they're looking for now, or I know how they work. It's almost like, to use another analogy, but the machine is broken. Which part of the machine needs fixed? Oh, it's this part over here. It's not this. And if I keep looking at this, it's not going to work because the problem is really over here. And I know with my son, one of my sons is like, I don't know exactly your system of personality styles, so I can't say with your same languaging, but I know for many of the rest of my family, we're all really achievement oriented and fulfillment oriented. And then he could care less, right? And so he's not the get it done kind of guy. He's the like sit back, relax, enjoy. Let me tell you, like more of the managerial type. And it's been so funny. But early on, I used another personality test to just really understand who he was. And it has been so helpful to realize, okay, this is not where he's strong. This isn't what motivates him. And so what can motivate him? How can we include him instead of trying to make him be like everybody else? Because he's not going to be the gung-ho, let me clean the whole room so that I can get a prize. No, that's not him. He's he wants to strategize, or we did like a little game the other night where we did a cooking contest for dinner, and everybody else is like in there, they're doing the cooking, they're blah blah, and he's like, I'll be the taste tester, right? And so he's over there and he doesn't want to make the food, but he was the best taste tester. He's 8 years old and he sat there and was like, I give this a 5 for presentation because of this, and this. And he just loved it so much in his position. So I can just see, that's a family example, but I can see how whenever you really understand how people operate, what motivates them. You can then connect with them and communicate instead of being frustrated. Like, why aren't you the one making the food right now? It's okay, that's not where you're strong. Let's put you where you're strong, or let's adapt in this way. So, yeah, go ahead.
What this does is it gives you more room to interpret. It gives you more on how the processing works. So you understand the processing, but it gives you more interpretation of where they're going. Does that make sense?
Yeah, use an example. So for my son, for example, I understand sort of what motivates him, but you're saying there's several other layers to it, or
So what I'm saying is it's not going to say whether he's driven or not driven. It's going to say more, this is the processing this is how he processes. He processes cost versus benefit. It's not going to say what is his cost versus benefit or where is he going to go. And it's not going to be that career big. It's going to give you more of that does that make sense? So like
Mhm.
the other modalities will do that. This one will not. This one will give you more of the interpretation and lead you to more discovery.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So tell us, is it like some of the other personality tests? Do you go somewhere and you take a test, or do you kind of read the book and understand, or how does somebody go about learning this, figuring out who they are, and then applying it?
It's more about reading the book and learning. We really have tried to create an assessment, but because this assessment, we were not in a place to create the assessment. We've tried multiple times, and it so much interpretation, and there's the language around it. A lot of times people will misinterpret what the difference between control and right is with our language, and so there would have to be a lot of training involved. And because when we're saying control, we're saying that you like the environment a certain way. When we're saying you want things to be the best, that's not control. You're looking to find it to be the best. And so people have interpreted it differently. And so we'd have to really work hard on the language. And so we're really trying to get is really trying to get people to think how you process, and then you determine what direction you go into. This is really about thinking and processing and seeing the patterns of learning and seeing the body language that comes with learning and understanding that that life's a journey, and that doing this is really just enjoying each other and enjoying the differences and seeing the variety that comes with it.
Yeah, fantastic. I actually love personality type things. And like you said, the different ones have different benefits to them. And it's helpful to see multiple ones to know and understand yourself in a different way. And so yours is specifically helping people connect, and that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to understand yourself in a way that will help you connect with others, that will help you belong and communicate in order to connect. So I am loving this. And if you want to, speaking of connect, if you want to connect with Nicole, you can find her on all the social platforms, but LinkedIn is the best one. And also, you can go to her website at theneedslanguages.com to check out your books. And then you had a special gift for all of our listeners, too, you said.
If someone decides to sign up with coaching for me, whatever book you're into, I have a dating book, a relationship book, a parenting book, and a workplace book. So if you sign up with one of my coaching packages or online training, because I also have an online training that can go more in depth with this, you get one of the books. So that's that's what I'm offering.
All right, amazing. So,
That's
yeah, and exciting to see what you're doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of you out there and helping people and how this is going to evolve over time. You also have another book that you're writing. So, definitely connect with Nicole and
yeah.
just keep on track to hear about what's coming next for you.
Yeah, I'm working on a dark personalities book because I'm seeing that we're having issues around uh, the connection and making sure that we can understand how to have healthy connections, and then also working on another one around healing systems of oppression with technology.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Broad stuff. You're changing the world stuff. This has changed the world
Yes.
here.
Yes.
Yeah.
What I really want is people to have their voice, because I think that each of us have something amazing to bring to this planet. And when we work together, we can create even more. One thing that I say is that I think is so important, and I really would like people to hear this. I say this often. If it wasn't, we often do not celebrate. We celebrate Dr. King's Day, but we don't celebrate Dr. King's Mom Day or Aunt Day or Sister Day or Brother Day or Teacher Day. But if it wasn't for the people that came around his life, we wouldn't have had the civil rights. And the civil rights impacted so much more. We wouldn't have had the ADA happen out of that, and a lot of the other movements that happened out of that. And so we don't know the impact we're making on people's lives when we do the small things or the words that we speak. So each one of us is worth belonging. Each one of us have something to bring to this planet. And when we live in the fullness of our destiny, we are impacting each other and creating that change.
That's so beautifully said. Thank you so much for that. I love that and resonate with that so much, that whether you're the Martin Luther King or you're one of the supports or the many people that led to that movement and that movement maker, you have a place here and you are needed. So beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Nicole. We'll see you guys next time on the show.
Thank you.